Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Urban Updates today, June 4th. We're really happy for you to join us, and let's get this started. Um, doo, doo, doo.
Yep, please feel free to use the chat for any questions and even like any interesting thoughts or curiosities. So be engaging as much as is useful to you all, as you know.
Today, we're really excited to welcome Lori Koenick from Cornell Extension. She has just a wealth of knowledge to share about urban soils and soils under protected culture. So today she's going to talk to us about exploring management practices for high organic matter soils and high tunnels in urban farms. Then we're going to talk about our state and regional updates and then open it up for QA. I know you guys are going to get a lot out of Lori's presentation. She's a really dynamic speaker and encourages participation. So if anyone has any questions, please feel free to post those in the chat or even just pipe up. We'd love to hear your perspectives. So Lori, why don't you take it away?
Hi, everyone. So thanks for that introduction, Megan. Super excited to be here. I met Megan and Terry in Fort Wayne, Indiana in February. If you're wondering why, as a New Yorker on this urban update, we connected and had a lot of fun talking about soil, and so excited to be here with you all. Before I bring up the slides, I'd love to get a sense of who is in the room. This is my first urban update. So I have a poll that I'm going to see if it works. Is it polling?
Yep,
Yes.
it is.
Great. So what is bringing you to this call today? What role do you play? I'm sure some of us have multiple roles. I'm an urban grower. I live in Rochester, New York, which is the third biggest city in New York. New York City is much bigger than us. But so I'm an urban grower. I have a home garden. I'm a community gardener. And I'm an extension educator. And I would also say I'm a student because I think I want to be a student for the rest of my life. I love learning from other folks. And so that would be my roles. So I'll let that go for a minute. I think it'll just keep going. Okay. I'm going to start sharing my slides. Let's see how that works. Bop, bop. All right. So, and I like to I have two screens, so I'll be looking at I'll definitely not look like I'm looking in the camera, looking at my other screen. But I do have, if anyone has their camera on, I can see your face on the other screen, just so you all know. I love faces. All right, so yeah, mixture of ag service providers, got some growers on the call, and okay, so thank you for participating in that. If we're curious, this is who's on the call today. Maybe it's probably just interesting to me. All right, so I'm assuming you just see the slide, and then I'm going to go to the next. Did that change slides?
Yes, it
Great.
did.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, some more background about me. So I am a specialist with the Cornell Veg team. So I work for Cornell Cooperative Extension, which is New York's extension program. My team works in Central and Western New York. And we're we work on vegetables. So I have a focus in fresh market vegetables, mushrooms, and urban ag. My background is in plant pathology, plant diseases, so I really like talking about pest management on the job. I do a lot of soil health work and also just general vegetable production practices in a variety of systems. And I started with the team 3 years ago. Before that, I was doing community horticulture education work. So, and I just like to share this slide to just give a big disclaimer. I'm not a soil scientist by training. I've learned a lot of stuff on the job. I've learned a lot of stuff with the amazing growers that I work with and colleagues. So, yeah, that's me. All right, so to start off this project, this presentation, I want to give some acknowledgements. So I figured a map might be helpful. This is the great state of New York. Usually when I say New York, folks think we're talking about New York City. And so for this, we had half of our partners' farms were in New York City, the other half were in Buffalo. Those are where our urban farms are located. And then our research high tunnel is in a very rural part of central New York, Penn Yan. So want to give deep gratitude for our partner farms. And then the project team is made up of Judson Reed. He's based in this near our research high tunnel. And then Sam Anderson is our team member that's based in New York City. So I've done a lot of the Buffalo work and he's done a lot of the New York City work, and Judd is all over the state. Also want to give a shout out to my predecessor, Caitlin Tucker. So like I said, I started in 2022 and she was on the project before that. Okay, so yeah, this is a 5-year project that had a lot of pieces, and today I'm just really giving an overview of the project. I'm happy to dive into any piece at any point, whatever's of interest to this group. So we focused on urban farms and high tunnel production. Coincidentally, a lot of urban high tunnels were involved in this project. A main piece was soil test interpretation for urban growers. So soil tests are important. How can we adapt these test results and interpret them for our urban settings? A big part of this project was demonstration trials on urban farms. So we focused a lot on pH adjustment, cover cropping, and a little bit of salts management. And then we also have a research high tunnel looking at winter cover cropping practices. And so, yeah, I'm gonna kind of divide the presentation today in those 3 pieces. And before I get into it, again, love to know the room. So I have another poll for y'all's, and let's see if I can go to number 2 start. Yay. So I'm curious for folks here, what soil management tools are you familiar with or regularly practicing? So pH adjustment, so that's trying to raise or lower the pH, cool season cover cropping, warm season cover cropping, bulk nutrient adjustment, soil testing, foliar testing our crops, salts management, and doing any of these soil health practices in a high tunnel.
So from the last slide, Lori, could you go back to that, please?
Yeah.
So the demonstration trials where you guys selected pH adjustment, cover cropping, and salts management, what got you guys to test those 3 specifically out of anything else that you could be testing?
That is a great question that hopefully I will get to.
All right.
I'll touch on. But yeah, so we'll dive into what these urban soils look like. A lot of them have high pH. And that affects their high pH because of the excess nutrients. And we see a lot of nutrient deficiencies on farm. So we thought pH adjustment was a reasonable target for folks to be implementing. And cover cropping. So let me another answer to that question is folks on our urban growers were already doing these practices, and this project was really to quantify impact. Why are we doing these? I love that. We can talk. If I didn't answer that by the end, let's go back to it.
Nice.
Okay, so I think the poll is still polling. All right, so we have some folks familiar with pH, some cover cropping experience. A lot of folks are familiar with soil tests, love it. All right, not a lot of high tunnel folks here. Good to know. All right, gonna end that poll. Maybe can you see the results if that's curious? Okay, I don't. All right, and then I will stop sharing that. Okay, so let's take a step back and just talk about what urban ag looks like in New York State. So as we know, folks here that work in urban ag looks different in every city and every state. It is diverse. But here are some ways we categorize it. And just to center us on what type of urban ag are we working with for this project. So we were working with soil-based farms and commercial farms. So commercial farms meaning they could be nonprofit or for-profit, but they're selling produce or services or farm products at least $1,000 a year. We call that commercial in our system. So these are the types of farms, urban farms we're working with. And we estimate New York State has over 40 commercial urban farms and over 800 community gardens. And those numbers are probably underestimates. We think it's a lot more. And if you're curious in how to define urban ag, this is a great report that came out a few years ago from a colleague that really does a nice job of talking about the different parts of urban ag. So recommend that if that's of interest. And okay, so urban soils. Figured it might be this could be a refresher for most of us, but what do we mean when we're talking about urban versus rural soils? So rural soils, we can call these our typical ag soils. Whoa. I don't know if I did that. Hopefully I didn't have a timer going. That would be really annoying. So these rural soils, they have been forming for hundreds to thousands of years. They have a well-defined soil structure. These are made up of sand, silt, and clay. And when we compare this to our urban soils, the underlying native material in urban settings, these soils, due to human activity, are often contaminated, of poor quality, heavily compacted. Their soil structure is unpredictable. These have the same parent material, sand, silt, clay, but also debris and can have contaminants. So you can see here the bricks and foundation pieces in these urban soils. So because of this, most urban growers grow in constructed soils. So these could be in raised beds, in framed or unframed raised beds. These are constructed because they are made of materials brought in or heavily amended with compost, topsoil, mulches, manures. So they have pretty little soil structure in comparison to our rural soils. They're a lot lighter. And why does this matter? What are the soils we're growing in? So we need to think about the soils and how we can adapt these management practices, our soil test results, to urban spaces. So thinking more about these constructed urban ag soils, refresher on them. So these are intensively cropped and managed spaces. So a lot of urban growers I work with, they are growing year round. They are constantly flipping over beds, trying to get the most out of a small space. I will say urban ag is diverse. So we worked with a variety of different types of farms. A lot of folks I work with in Buffalo are growing in the ground and building on top of that native parent soil. We also have some folks in raised beds. all different types. And why do we care about the soils? Well, we know that soil health is crop health, and soil health is more than just the nutrients in it. It has three parts that we're managing: the physical part, the chemical part, the nutrients, and then the biological part, the life in the soil. And so we can look at these three pieces and how they might differ in an urban soil compared to a rural soil. So thinking about the chemical component of an urban soil, these are high pH. They typically have higher salts, higher nutrients in general, especially calcium. And we see frequently nutrient imbalances in our urban soils compared to a rural soil. Thinking about the physical part, these are shallower soils. We're building them up. So lower depth, little compaction, but since the depth is low, we sometimes see it almost can mimic a plow pan, like a subsurface compaction because of the little depth. So is it compaction or is it depth is a question a lot on my mind. As I said, the structure is poor or just not there, so pretty low aggregate stability and lower bulk density. And then the biological piece, they're very high in organic matter. There's so much life in these soils. And then you can't talk about urban soils without mentioning contaminants. Yes, there are a higher risk of contaminants in urban soils. This project really focused on building soil fertility. So I will not be discussing heavy metals and contaminants for the rest of the talk. But that is very important to urban growers. Okay, so looking closer at this organic matter. So this whole talk is about managing these high organic matter soils. What does that mean? So over 5 years, soil sampled a bunch of farms, a bunch of beds. We saw a range of 4.6 up to in the 30s of organic matter with an average around 14. So this is not bad. Organic matter is very important. As we know, it is involved in every part, the nutrient cycle, the soil structure, every part of soil, organic matter has an effect on. So having organic matter, it helps, we see, with good drainage, relatively little compaction at the, in the top 6 inches. We see there's a steady supply of nutrients available, a lot of calcium, phosphorus, and magnesium and micronutrients. And we do see there's a good bit of nitrogen in the soil available already as that organic matter breaks down. On the flip side, with these high organic matter soils, there's challenges. So they can certainly dry out fast, especially if they're frequently tilled or disturbed. So water retention is something to think about. Again, this high pH, so that's due to really the excess nutrients. And these, so we see these nutrient imbalances, and also thinking about when we have a lot of nitrogen, that can cause a variety of issues, especially if it's an unpredictable, we don't know when that nitrogen is going to be released into plant available forms. The high calcium, the high phosphorus, these are interacting with other nutrients in the soil, making them maybe less available to the plant and cranking up that pH. And with all these extra nutrients, there is potential for leaching out and getting in the water. And so when we talk about high pH, let me go back actually. With organic matter, it is worth noting that a typical rural ag soil has usually like up to 5%. And that's really good for a rural ag soil. So that's just to share how much higher our urban soils are in their organic matter. So with
we have a question that might be a little relevant, so you can either address it now or you can answer it later if you think you're going to cover it. So Kevin asks or says hi, and he's asked, you may get to this. We spoke about how heavily composted soils weigh less than soil, so a normal soil test might overestimate the potassium levels. Very interested in when to consider bulk density adjustments. Is there a soil organic matter number that triggers us to think we should adjust? And do you find that high tunnel growers are using tests other than routine soil tests, such as saturated media extracts?
Oh, so much good stuff in that question. Really
Yeah.
appreciate it. Gonna come back to that because I think I might introduce other topics that might
Yep,
help my understand, yeah, folks understand my explanation of that question.
all
Very
good.
much appreciate it. Um, yes. So, high pH. Again, for vegetable production, we recommend a pH between 6 and 7. On our urban farms, we're seeing a range of 6.8 to 8. Typically, around 7.5 is a typical pH. As most of us probably know, pH affects nutrient available, what's available to the plant. So we really want a pH between 6 and 7 to have the most nutrients available to the plant. And with these high pH, so we see deficiencies, some micronutrients deficiencies, manganese deficiency in particular. And so with our high calcium, our high phosphorus levels, that's what we think is driving up the pH, and we want to work on bringing it down. Okay, so that's urban soils. Now, the other part of this, we're talking about high tunnels. High tunnels are also intensively managed spaces, very productive spaces. So for folks that might not be familiar in these systems, they can be very productive. It's a, we call these soil-based greenhouses. That's what we mean when I say a high tunnel. And in New York, we see these spaces are frequently tilled. There's not necessarily a lot of crop rotation. Lots of fertility inputs. They're planted all year round. And of course, they're covered protected structures. So there's not that natural rain events that can help us leach out some nutrients. So we call these irrigated deserts. In our high tunnels, we see the same challenges that we do in urban soils or similar. That's why we tied them together for this project. We see high pH, high salts, calcium, phosphorus, magnesium, higher evidence of soil-borne diseases if you're growing the same crops in the same space year after year. We can see structure over time growing in these spaces, soil structure can degrade, go down, compaction can be an issue, and the similar nutrient deficiencies. So solutions for these challenges can be, we really want to optimize our fertility, improve drainage and the structure, and feed our soil microbes to build back these high tunnel soils. So our urban demonstration trials, as I mentioned, these are taking practices that a lot of growers are already doing and trying to quantify the impact. What are the benefits of these practices? How do they work on urban farms? So a big piece of this is soil testing to see what we're working with, a starting point. And how are we assessing impact? So I'll talk about metrics in a little bit. This project had a big project emphasis on soil biology. And when we're thinking about capturing the impacts, when are we doing it? How are we doing it? Where? What? Lots of questions. Lots of lessons learned along the way. Yeah, so I guess I'll touch on Kevin's question. I'm not going to touch too much on the soil nutrient results for bulk density. That is a lot of my colleague Sam's work in New York City. But essentially what that is, urban soils are lighter than our rural soils. So they have a lower bulk density. So if you think about like a heavy mineral soil versus a compost-based urban soil. So Sam has found that a regular soil test result is converting to pounds per acre. The conversion factor can overestimate nutrients that are actually in the soil. So you see the soil test, you see it's excessive, but then when you account for bulk density, you're seeing these they're overestimating the nutrients in the soil. And Yeah, and I would say it really could depend on what the bulk density is. So in Buffalo, for folks that are growing in the ground, those are heavier soils. So if the bulk density is similar to 2, which is like a typical rural soil, then you're not going to see a big difference with the bulk density adjustment. But if you're a lot of our compost-based soils in New York City and some in Western New York have a bulk density of like 0.5 to 1, then I would consider a bulk density adjustment, and you could see a difference. So I'll start. Yeah, I'll go with that question. We can talk more about it later. Okay, so metrics. How are we assessing impact? And lots of different ways. So for cover cropping, we're looking at how much above ground biomass is there. We're foliar testing that to see how much nitrogen is in there to calculate how much nitrogen that could be putting back to the crop. For cash crops, we're looking at we're foliar testing the leaves to see the nutrition in that plant, how much nutrients they're actually taking from the soil. We can also look at yields. And this project really focused, today I'm going to be talking about our soil metrics. So like I said, soil is the physical, biological, and chemical component. Lots of different ways to test these different pieces. And some tests you see the impacts quicker after management affects some of these metrics quicker than others. So it can take a long time to see a change in organic matter, whereas looking at active carbon, you can see a change much quicker in management practices. So I'm happy to talk about metrics. This has been a huge learning curve for me. How to assess impact, what are the metrics to use? Okay, so this is just a snapshot of an urban soil test. So this is really just looking at the fertility. This is a classic standard soil test. You can see right away, as I mentioned, very high levels of calcium and magnesium. Most nutrients are high or very high. You see that high organic matter. This is an urban high tunnel. We're seeing high salts, high pH. And we like to use this slide to say, more is not always better. So too much of a good thing is not a good thing when we're looking at just really the chemical part of the soil. In contrast, we submitted soils to our Cornell Soil Health Lab, and they are doing a lot more, it's more extensive testing, a lot of tests looking at the physical and the biological components of soil in addition to the fertility. Why am I showing this? So you see the values, the chemical part is pretty similar to that old soil test, but the rating, so green is good. The darker the green is good. So this urban soil, same soil, actually got an incredibly high soil rating. It's very interesting to us. Like it said soil pH is a 7.5 and it's dark green. And we've had a lot of discussions with the Soil Health Lab, how they get their ratings. And again, this is all just to bring up that these soil tests were not designed on urban soils. So we need to take, results are not good or bad, but it's the interpretation piece you need to take with a grain of salt and think about your setting. So it just cracks me up because for years we only were using really the fertility soil tests and we're like doom and gloom. And then we started using these comprehensive soil health lab tests and we're like, it's perfect, your soil's great. So I'm saying that tongue in cheek, but it's nuanced. It's not simple.
I do have a question.
Yeah.
Whenever we get our soil reports back and we see the number of, let's, for example, say calcium and magnesium, are you all looking at like soil tests in relation, the results in relationship to total available versus plant available forms of those nutrients, or is there not a distinction? And if there's not a distinction, should there be? Or does it not matter?
That's a great question. So we predominantly use soil tests that our growers are using. And that is just looking at the nutrients in the soil. So it's not considering plant available necessarily. But I appreciate that because that's a whole, yeah, it's like what's in the soil, but then what's actually available to the plant. So that, I appreciate the question. Okay, so for our pH trials where we were trying to lower the pH to help with nutrient availability, to help maybe address some of these deficiencies, you have to think about so how are we adjusting these soils? We're using elemental sulfur. This comes in pelleted and powdered forms. A lot of folks I work with like to use the pelleted form because it's easier to deal with. The powdered form can kind of get everywhere when you apply it. And when you're thinking about rates, you have to think about your soil texture, and then also your starting pH. So lots of things to think about. So we did one trial in Buffalo where we applied sulfur in 2021, and then 2 years later, so we did a 2-pound rate per 100 square foot, and then we increased that to 5 pounds. In this farm, they use sulfur all over the farm. They have the growers are very happy with it. They think it has helped their crop health and yields. Important to note, very high calcium levels in the tunnel. So this took place in this high tunnel. This high tunnel is next to this brick building, which radiates heat onto the tunnel. So it's just very hot in there. Lots of salts. And they irrigate this tunnel with, most of the time with well water that is also high. It's a high pH and high in salts irrigation source. So lots of challenges to overcome. A very simple demonstration. So we just had one row, one half was sulfur, the other half we didn't add sulfur to. What we found, it was not a simple story. It was nuanced. So throughout the trial, we found our sulfur plot consistently had higher pH than our control plot. But we did see evidence that looking at the starting, we did see sulfur lower the pH a little bit quicker than the control plot. We also noticed that this site there, we think there's a lot more going on in so the back half of the tunnel was the sulfur plot, which experienced seasonal flooding. So we don't think this data is a good representation because there's a lot of variability going on, but it's also just lessons learned is seasonality when you soil test matters. We typically see higher pH in the spring, lower pH in the fall. So when you're making comparisons, trying to assess impact, make sure you soil test at the same time every year. And we saw that seasonality also looking at salts. Pretty much every soil metric, you want to soil test at the same time each year. You can't compare a spring soil test to a fall soil test. This kind of reinforced that for us. And we did some foliar testing before I started, and we did see higher nutrients available in the in pepper plants in the sulfur plot compared to the non-sulfur plot. So that was some positive evidence. And then also looking at a farm in New York City, again, had 2 sulfur applications. This project, this trial had a little bit more sophisticated experimental design, 2 rows, half was sulfur, half was control, try to capture more of the variability. Also at this site in New York City, they had heavy pillbug pressure, and they were wondering if lowering the pH would help manage pillbugs. Pillbugs, roly-polies, they're like the little crustaceans. We are a big pest problem on urban farms. They love high organic matter and high pH soils. And again, at this site, we did see these results were nuanced. We saw our sulfur plot consistently was lower this time than the control plot, but we saw how quick the pH was rising or lowering. Adding the elemental sulfur did have an effect. We also saw positive results with the pill bugs, managing the pill bugs. So the plots that didn't have sulfur, much higher damage levels than the plots that did have the sulfur. So the lower pH plots, we saw a lot less feeding damage on radish. So that was exciting. And now a lot of urban growers are using this as a potential management tool for pill bugs. And a story here is it's not as simple as you think. These urban soils have such high amounts of calcium and other nutrients. They're a very high barrier to bring that pH down. And we're also curious for future work to look at how long does the impact of this one sulfur application have on the soil as a future question. All right, so then a cover cropping, there's a site in Buffalo that these growers have been cover cropping for 20 years. They were curious to kind of quantify the impact of the cover cropping. They already use it regularly. They know it encourages soil health. It helps prevent erosion. They see moisture retention and helps with compaction issues, weed suppression. They already know all these things. We wanted to see if we could quantify it in the data. So we looked at oats and then an oats hairy vetch mix and compared it to 2 in-ground control. And we did see promising results in looking at the soil biology. So we did see our cover crop plots did have, it supported the microbial life in the soil, higher microbial respiration, microbial biomass. And again, the growers reported excellent moisture retention and soil structure in the cover crop plots and weed suppression. A lesson learned, though, is these plots were quite small, and we did notice a trend that the plots that were next to each other, as we would expect, had similar results as the plots. So our south control was closer to our hairy vetch plot in oats, and our north control was closer to our oats plots. And we saw the soil metrics kind of were parallel in which, as we would expect. So soil takes time to change. Okay, so
quick question about can radishes help to keep pill bugs away?
Great question. So we actually find that pill bugs love radishes. So I would not say, but they also really love high organic matter, high pH. So I would not say that radishes can deter them, in my experience. I don't know if other folks have experience with that.
So like not a correlation, basically, and it doesn't feel like that's the correlation.
Yes.
Yeah. And then another just kind of statement, in case you've seen anything, there's a grower in Indiana that has concerns about too high of sulfur levels. They realize that elemental sulfur will lower pH, but are worried about excessive sulfur buildup. I have seen sulfur levels increase drastically, but I have never seen research saying it could be an issue. Have you seen anything like that?
I really appreciate that point. We always ask, how much can you have too much? In our experience, sulfur toxicity is rare. My coworker who's been working in ag for 25 years, he said he's seen it less than 5 times. We are not concerned about sulfur toxicity at this point because there's so much, it's such a high barrier of calcium and salts to overcome. So we are not worried about sulfur toxicity. But I did a deep dive looking for anything on sulfur toxicity. There's really not a lot of research out there. I do have some photos I can share with you, Kevin, about what sulfur toxicity looks like, that we saw through foliar testing from my coworker 20 years ago. But that's a great question. All right, so now jumping to our research trials, looking at cover cropping and high tunnels. Curious if folks have any thoughts, feel free to put them in the chat, what you think. This group has mixed experience with cover cropping, I think, from the earlier poll, but I'm just curious, any thoughts? Any compared to cover cropping outside an unprotected ag, what might be different when you're thinking about doing it in a high tunnel? Yes, winter kill, temperature effects, pest damage overall. Yep, absolutely. Okay, so here are general practices that we've made through observation. So the program I work for has been cover cropping in high tunnels for the last 5 to 10 years. So here are kind of our best practices, things to think about. So we know that cover cropping, there's lots of research out there about the effects it has on the soil, and so we'll dive into that in a second. But when you're thinking about cover cropping in a high tunnel, you want to think about, what's your goals for it, the timing, your termination strategy, just as you would think for cover cropping anywhere. Kevin brought up exactly this concept of winter kill. We plant cover crops outside sometimes thinking they're going to die over the winter kill, and that's our termination strategy. Would that apply in a tunnel? We find inoculating your legumes is very important, just as it is outside. We find you do have to irrigate after planting. Usually one time does the trick, one solid irrigation. We'll use row covers if we're planting later in the season to help maximize our biomass production. We do see pest outbreaks, but we have yet to see damage in the cash crop because we're strategically choosing cover crops that are in different families from our cash crop. So this is just a broad overview of the trials I've been involved with since I've started. So we've looked at ratios of field pea and triticale. We've looked at mixes versus monocultures. So I'm going to dive into these a little bit individually. It's also 9:44. Do I have till 10 or?
Carry on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I can go. Yeah, I might go a little quicker through some of this, and then we can go back to it with questions or discussion. If anyone out there is really into statistics, I could talk a lot about experimental design. This data is messy. Soil is messy. And so that has also been a lesson for future experiments. We are really trying to increase our reps and have bigger plots to help with our statistics. Can talk about that if that's of interest. So here's a general workflow of these trials. So here we're doing a fall cover crop. For our small plots, I have tried broadcast seeders or just using my hand. I use like a Parmesan cheese shaker type thing for seeding the small plots. I seed species separately. We found that is more successful. I got this technique from a grower that I work with named John. Thanks, John. Like I said, irrigation is important. So we get these established in the fall, anywhere from usually September, October. We'll do biomass samples throughout the winter. So we're quantifying how much above ground plant material there is. And then we will soil test when we're going to terminate. The grower will incorporate that. And then we, at our research site, tomatoes are the cash crop. So they're planting tomatoes in early April. So the cover crop is usually in the ground for 5 to 6 months, and then they're planting tomatoes early April, and those are there through September. And then we're quantifying foliar nutrient status, also collecting yield data. So what have we seen in our trials? This is, most of what I'm sharing with you is observations. It's not statistically significant, but it's just trends. So, and none of this is shocking, but it's nice to see the data supporting what we already know. So we've seen that planting date can affect your species growth, especially with legumes. So we find the earlier the planting date really helps get your legume established. So the P here is our legume. And then, so in our first year, we had an October planting. Our second year, we had an end of August planting because the grower was just done with the tunnel. The tomato prices were low and he wanted to work on his pumpkins. So we got them in super early that year. So we saw massive growth, as one would expect. Planting date, the earlier you plant, the more growth you have. And related to that, the more growth you have, we're seeing higher nitrogen contribution can go to the crop. So we're seeing just 100% field pea. If you're planting end of August, you can have around 300 pounds of nitrogen potentially that could be going to your cash crop. But there's a catch. So when you're, of course, planting earlier, you get more growth. Here you can see Judd and the pea. These are field peas. They are up to his waist in December, but we actually saw there was so much growth in December. The peas lodged. We saw a lot of white mold and aphids, and we actually had to mow the trial then that year to deal with pest pressure. And the grower also rolled up the sides of the high tunnel in January to kind of give a deep freeze to help with that. And we didn't see any effects in our cash crop, but you have to, just like with that, you have to pay attention to your cover crop. Big lesson there. More is not always better. I'll share that looking at the effect of the cover crops on our cash crops, so in this case, tomatoes, we did not see any trends or differences between no cover crop and cover crop. We were not surprised by this because it's a commercial site where they fertilize throughout the summer. So in our future trials, we have a research site where we won't be adding fertilizer. So we're curious to see if there'll be yield impacts at that site. But in these early trials, we did not see any effect on cash crop yields. But we did see effects of cover cropping affecting the soil. So we did not see differences in if you have all field pea or field pea and triticale or in different ratios. But when you just look at cover cropping compared to bare ground, we did see, as you would expect, the cover crop really is stimulating the soil microbiology. And these tests were taken in the middle of the tomato growing season. So it's just interesting to see those effects. So it's nothing surprising, but it's nice to see the data supporting what we already know about cover crops. And then we also saw that cover cropping can increase the organic matter in our high tunnels. Organic matter naturally is increasing every year in our high tunnels because of the high fertility inputs and the way they're managed. But we saw that our cover crop plots on average increased by 6.7 the organic matter, whereas our bare ground was less than that. All right, then we did a treatment in between grant projects and funding. We looked at our growers really interested in mixtures versus single species. A lot of folks outside of tunnels are just growing a single species grain. So we looked at triticale versus a commercial mix that had grains and legumes. We saw that the tomatoes that were grown in the cover crop plots had much higher foliar nutrition than the single species grain, the triticale, which we're not surprised by. But it encouraged us to continue looking at this mixtures versus monocultures question in high tunnel settings. So that's what our current research really is about. So we're looking at a mix that has crimson clover, Austrian winter pea, oats, rye, tillage radish, comparing that to just a cereal rye, just a single species legume, and then a bare ground control. And so these, we've had year one of that, and just interesting results to share. This was planted in October and we terminated in middle of March, so about 5 months. And our rye did not get very tall, but it was looking decently happy at termination. Austrian winter pea and the mix had, so we quantified how much percent dead, I'm calling it. I know it has a technical name that I can't think of right now, but at the end we looked at our 16 plots, how much was alive, how much was dead, a visual assessment. Our rye was pretty happy, as we would expect. Our winter pea and our mix were similar, but mostly survived throughout the winter. So like Kevin said, winter kill, thinking about that in tunnels, you have to think about it because our oats, some, half of them died. But the pea, the clover, some of it was pretty hardy. The tillage radish, it depends on the year, but it was not all dead at the end. So just from this first year, we thought it was very interesting to note that our legume, the winter pea, actually had the highest amount of growth throughout the whole trial. Which we were shocked. We would expect the grain, the rye, to really lead in that. But, so that was of interesting, not quite sure why that is. Also, some things did behave as expected. So our legumes, of course, contributed the most nitrogen. Our rye did not get very big. So looking at the carbon to nitrogen ratios, again, this might be a metric we're not all familiar with, but our grain had the highest as we would expect, but it was actually much less than you would normally expect. So maybe the grain is not tying up as much. We saw promising results again that our cover crops are increasing our soil microbes. Specifically in the grain in the soil component. The grain and the legume did more alone than the control. And then also looking at compaction, we saw promising results that, again, our grain and legume are supporting our soil structure. All right. So that is just a snapshot of data. These are, again, some quick best management practices about cover cropping and high tunnels. And thanks for sticking with me at this whole long convoluted tale, but just big picture takeaways from this project are that soil tests are important, but you need to, when you're interpreting the results, think about the setting. We can see that pH management does lead to higher crop quality in these high organic matter soils, and we've seen many benefits how cover cropping can work in these high organic matter soils. And an overall takeaway for me is that soil is messy. You need to choose your metrics wisely, and it takes time to see results. And everything I shared is online in case studies and fact sheets and bulletins, and we can put that in the chat or make that available to folks for a little bit more straightforward story of everything I told today. And I will end it there with questions.
I love that so much. Soil is messy. Could not get more accurate than that. Thank you so much, Lori. That was so fascinating to see exactly what our growers are asking for being tested. I mean, these points are exactly what we've had questions about. And so, yeah, you guys are doing really great, helpful research, and I'm sure people are gonna watch this again and pause and um we'll post this on our website, you all, so find that recording there. Does anyone have any follow-up questions or thoughts? Anything to share with Lori? Feel free to always message us, even if it's an afterthought.
I'll chime in. I never touched on the saturated media extracts that Kevin asked way back. Some folks are using that. It's mixed. I would say the majority of people that we work with are just using basic soil tests at this point, and we're starting to dive into what are the appropriate tests to use. But that is a question I have myself. What is the best test to use? Yeah.
Yeah, and I think you could have so many different things because it's such a seasonality thing too. When you were saying, why did the peas grow quicker or more than the grains? And it's like, well, maybe it was the time of year, or maybe those seeds were, I don't know, like inoculated in the best conditions, or the saturation plus the temperature of moisture as they were planted just gave them that bolt. And then, like, every year the temperatures are changing. So who knows if that has anything to do with it. But as you guys continue to study all of these different components together, like pH against salts and calcium, magnesium against pH and or whatever else, like piecing some of more of these together might show really interesting data, but it was really hard because there's so many variables.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, looking forward to as all the information that you guys keep collecting. Go ahead, Megan, I think, or are we all ready to do our statewide regional updates?
Yeah, absolutely. So as you guys know, we're going to be doing some regional highlights here. And the first thing that we wanted to talk about is that hooray, our federal funding has been fully restored. And that's going to carry through our end of the fiscal year, which is September 2025. So we do want to demonstrate some gratitude and say a big thank you to CWI and the district investments that have kept urban soil health moving forward. So essentially, it's business as usual ish as we are looking at future funding. We have dedicated $50,000 towards the continuation of the work of the local working groups. And we really want to encourage big conversations and continued collaboration towards working group sustainability and what working groups are going to look like in their next iteration as we move past September 2025. So we're still working to secure funding. So all creative ideas are welcome. We're still really, really committed to the work that we do in the state. And we want to continue working with you all. So please help us continue if you have any ideas about where that funding exists, or just some creative partnerships that could help us continue our work. As you can see in this lovely graphic, we've been hard at work with boots on the ground in the state, as well as encouraging you all to do that work as well. And we just really appreciate that partnership across the many lines of collaboration that you all have engaged in. So we really thank you, and we are excited about what October and November and December and then 2026 looks like for us. So yeah, please reach out if you know of anyone or have some ideas, because we're always open to that collaboration. Um, Another great thing is our website is live. Through the really difficult work that Terry and Ellie engaged in, we have a beautiful new website. So it's at that same urbansoilhealth.org location. But I think you'll find that it is a significantly more polished look, and please engage with it. It's there for you all, and we still have great resources available for everyone, as well as a really nice events interface. So if you're looking for free, um, community oriented and educational events, you will find them there in addition to our social media. So Tanvi, you want to take it away for your Northwest highlight?
Yes, ma'am. Um, I don't have much because I've been out on medical leave for the past few weeks. So the last month has not been as active as I would hope, given that spring and summer are just blooming into action. But what I was doing and have been kind of doing for the most part is a lot of soil tests and analyses. So been getting a lot of requests for people getting soil tests done, which is really exciting, because that just opens up so many different opportunities for me to be able to engage with growers about different points to consider in gardening. Like it's just a conduit to being able to talk about more. So thank you to all of you guys for requesting soil tests. If not from me, then from your SWCDs. So, and then Lake County Working Group held their Growing with Contaminated Soils workshop, which was really great. We had a lot of different experts show up there, and great takeaway. Gardeners got to learn about how to do soil tests, how to prevent themselves from getting contaminated, what to consider, where to get more heavy metal testing done. So that was like just a really good program. And the Marion County SWCD held a couple of different, at least two gardening with soil health workshops at the demonstration garden in Indianapolis. I don't know exactly how they went, but I know that the attendance was there, and Kevin does a great job at covering all of the cover crops that he's been using, how that's affected soil health and the rotations, what's been working, and there's just a budding number of events that are coming up soon. So stay tuned.
In the Northeast, we've got Terry share. She engaged. I am not seeing the notes that she left for me, unfortunately.
You can read them off, Megan.
Thank you very much, Tanvi. Go for it.
All right. No worries. So it's been a really busy month for Terry. She has two highlights that she would like to share, and both of them are from St. Joseph County, specifically in South Bend. So in the beginning of May, a month ago, she visited the St. Joseph Reentry Center with Sarah from the SWCD. They have a large plot of land that they've been farming with the residents here. So it's a partnership with Unity Gardens, and all the produce, thousands of pounds per year, get donated to food pantries. So this project teaches the folks the skill of self-resiliency through growing your own food. So we provided soil samples and interpretations of the results for their annual vegetable plots and their fruit trees to help them grow even better. So, and then in the middle of the month, St. Joseph County Working Group Scrap hosted their small farm tour. So the tour started at Sunchoke's farm with Susan showing her urban farm in the backyard and a few neighboring empty lots she rents from the city of South Bend. So she does a rocking job at Salad Greens and provides produce and value-added products at the market 50 weeks a year, which is amazing. Afterwards, they visited Patrick's Garden Produce, which is a much larger scale and has been growing produce for over 40 years. He has acres of land on the outskirts of town and specializes in seasonal veggies such as sweet corn, tomatoes, and watermelon. Both of these farms are under the umbrella of small scale diversified vegetable production, and yet they are so different in practices and farming styles. So seeing the contrast between their farming styles was such a cool way to show that there's more than one path to growing incredible food that's good for the land and our communities. So sounds amazing.
Thank you, Tanvi.
You're welcome.
For myself in the Southeast, I just want to plug our Living Farm series. Our big kickoff is in July on the 13th, also in South Bend. Our Living Farm series is on-farm education for small-scale growers, where we discover conservation practices through the lens of season extension. So every farm will be on practices some form of season extension, but we're also going to do a little bit of a deeper dive into specific technical assistance for conservation practices. So we'll be at Lee's Edible Acres on the 13th from 2 to 5. And Ryan Lee has graciously offered to host us, and he's going to be talking about cover crop basics as well as irrigation solutions in high tunnels. As always, this is a free event. We will feed you. We will have fun. We will learn. We will network. And we're very excited about sharing this series with you all because it is going to be statewide. And so once a month, we are gathering on a Sunday afternoon all across the state. So if you RSVP to that event, we'd love to have you. But we also are interested in sharing what we have across the state. So we'll be up north in July. In August, we're going to be at the Purdue Student Farm. In September, we're going to be down at my farm in Jefferson County. In October, we're going to be in Tippecanoe County at Marian Rodriguez Soto's farm. So we're going to be bopping around the state. So please join us when we get near you, or take a field trip and come and see us. In the middle, we have this really great event that I got
Hey,
to
Megan,
share.
can
Yeah,
you share your screen again? Or is it,
I am sharing.
are you? Okay, sorry, never mind. It's just me.
Can everyone see my screen? I just want to make sure.
Yeah, it's just me. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. That's all right. In the middle with those pink shirts, I got to engage with the Vernon Township senior work day. So seniors from the local high school came by to the Vernon Township trustees community garden, and they filled beds, which was really great. And we built a big composting bin. We were able to build 6 bins for their composting in the area. Had a great time, and I just really appreciated working with these seniors who are on their way to big things. And then on the far right, we did a high tunnel build and learn at the historic Huddleston Farmhouse in Cambridge City. It was just a really great day where we put up a 30 by 96-foot high tunnel in less than a work day. I think it only took about 6 hours with our team that we had from neighbors, community gardeners, and a couple visitors from NRCS, as well as Soil and Water Conservation Districts. So it was a really great day. Tyler Gow was actually on farm at Indy Urban Acres the day before and had put up 2 high tunnels with Indy Urban Acres and Kevin Allison. And then the next day put up this high tunnel on his property. So wow, 3 high tunnels in 3 days. It might be a record. It was pretty impressive. So we had a great time, and those tunnel builds are part of our Living Farm series. So please keep an eye out. I'll be doing a high tunnel build on my property at the end of September. So keep an eye open for that, and hopefully we can add more tunnel builds across the state. And so let's go to the Southwest highlight here. Go ahead, Tanvi.
Yes, ma'am. So we have a lot of people out on vacation right now, so that's why we're bopping around a little bit. So Casey, who's in the Southwest, the spring season for her has also gone off to an exciting start. The school year is wrapping up, and she had the opportunity to participate in Vermilion County's kindergarten days. She's amazing with kids. The students learned about germination and took home a sunflower seed to plant. At the end of the month, she attended a farm visit at Wild Wilder Love Farm in Monroe County, right outside of Bloomington. So this field day was organized by Kevin Allison and sponsored and supported by Marion County SWCD and Monroe County SWCD. So it was a perfect day for them, for the participants to learn about small scale farming practices and share knowledge with one another, including the use of this really neat weeding tool that is just, there's a picture of it in our newsletter. So, really cool month for Casey, too.
Thanks, Tanvi. Um, Next, we are just highlighting some events here with in the next couple of months. We've got the Power of Pollinators in Auburn, beneficial insect habitat at small farms in Tippecanoe on the 10th. On the 17th, we've got an Ag Day at Allen County Fairgrounds in Fort Wayne. We're really excited about our June 18th Soil Health Working Group Summit. So we invite all of our working groups to come participate, to learn from one another, to share a meal, to network, and because you guys deserve to be celebrated. You've done a great job. Then there's a pollinator picnic in English on June 26th with the Crawford and Orange Working Group. Then on July 11th and 12th, the Veteran Farming Conference is happening in Shipshewana, and I know that Terry is speaking at that event. Like I said earlier, July 13th is our kickoff for the Living Farm series at Lee's Edible Acres in North Liberty, Indiana. We always have a good time at the Purdue Small Farm Education Field Day on July 24th. You should really check that out. You'll learn a lot. July 29th is going to be the Gary and Merrillville Soil Tour in Gary and Merrillville, Indiana. And then below, let's see if I move all of this stuff. On August 16th, we're going to turn scraps into soil with composting basics in South Bend. And then August 17th, with the Living Farm series, we're going to be at the Purdue Student Farm. You can take that QR code, will take you to our events page for those of you who are interested in engaging. And then we're really excited that we're going to have the capacity to do Get the Dirt this year. We're doing it in September, on September 4th in 2025. We haven't decided on a location yet, but it will be in central Indiana. And for those of you who haven't been to Get the Dirt before, it is a full day event where we're diving into conservation topics for agricultural professionals and small scale diversified farmers and gardeners. It is also free. We always have a great meal. So to save that date, it'll be a Thursday, September 4th. And I want to open up the meeting for any partner shares. If any of you want to tell us what's going on in your districts or invite us to something fun, now is your chance to do so.
Hey, this is Julie Clark. My video might not come through real good for the signal but I wanted to let y'all know that we are planning a field day garden workshop, come September 25th. And, that is going to be in rural Warren County, which most of Warren County is rural.
What day is that, Julie? What
That's
day
gonna be September 25th.
and location?
It will be at my farm, actually.
Okay. Well, where could we find that?
that I will be posting that on our website with the address as well as sign up capabilities, probably late July, early August.
Yep.
And my website is Warco, yeah, WARCOSWCD.com.
Awesome. Send it
that's,
my way, Julie, anytime. I'll forward it.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I didn't catch all that.
I was just saying, forward it out to me and I'll send it out to everyone.
I will do that, Tommy. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm gonna have to hop off of here though. I've got something else coming in, so.
No problem.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for sharing. This was a great thing today, a great update.
Thanks for joining us. And then Megan, maybe we'll go to the next slide. And if anyone else has any other partner shares, please feel free to reach out to any of us. But basically we'll see you at the next urban updates meeting, which is July 2nd. Just a reminder that we're doing the first Wednesday of each month now. So you'll find our schedule on the, if you use the QR code or just go on our website. And we haven't finalized any topic or speaker quite yet, but same time, same link, and we'll see you there. So just keep on keeping on, you soil warriors. Happy summer.
Thanks for